The colony sky was a quiet canvas of fading orange when the explosion ripped through the evening silence. The sound rolled across the hills like thunder, shaking the farmhouse windows and sending Rex, the German shepherd, into a storm of barking. His owners, a small family who had worked the newly settled land for years, rushed outside in alarm. Smoke rose from beyond the tree line, a thin column twisting upward like a black finger against the sky. Rex growled low in his throat, ears pricked, his body tense as if he sensed something beyond the smoke. The father hesitated, but curiosity and worry won out. Together with his wife and their teenage daughter, they followed the barking shepherd into the forest, their footsteps crunching against the dry leaves as the scent of burned metal filled the air. When they reached the clearing, the sight froze them in place. A pod-shaped craft, twisted and broken, lay half buried in the soil, still glowing with heat. Its surface was covered with strange, pulsating markings that looked almost alive. Sparks hissed from cracks in the hull, and faint blue smoke rose upward. Rex growled again, pulling against his leash, straining toward the wreck. The family exchanged nervous glances, fear flickering in their eyes, but then they heard it, soft, trembling, like the whimper of a child. It was coming from inside the pod. The daughter gasped, her instincts pulling her forward before caution could stop her. The parents called after her, but she had already climbed onto the cracked hull, peering inside through a jagged tear in the metal. What she saw made her heart stumble. Curled up in the wreckage was a small creature unlike anything she had ever seen. Its body shimmered faintly as though its skin was made of scales and light all at once. Tiny wings, torn and battered, folded against its sides. Its breathing was shallow, weak, every exhale sounding like a cry of pain. And then it opened its eyes. The girl felt her breath catch. Those eyes were bright and unearthly, glowing like molten gold, wide and terrified. The creature tried to move but flinched, its body too weak. In that same instant, Rex leapt forward, dragging his leash from the father's hand, bounding onto the pod with powerful strides. The family shouted, terrified the dog might attack, but something unexpected happened. The dragon, because there was no mistaking what it was, locked eyes with Rex. The glow in its gaze steadied, the trembling in its body slowed, and instead of recoiling, it made a sound almost like a whine, soft and uncertain. Rex stopped, standing tall, ears forward. He didn't snarl. He didn't bark. He simply stared back, and then, as though declaring some silent agreement, he sat down beside the broken creature. The dragon, struggling weakly, dragged itself closer and curled against him, resting its head on Rex's side. The shepherd didn't move, didn't resist. He only stayed there, his body tense at first, then slowly relaxing as the dragon gave a faint, relieved sigh. The family watched in stunned silence, unable to believe what they were seeing. The father whispered, "It's bonding with him." The mother shook her head, fear clear in her voice. "We can't bring that thing back. What if it's dangerous?" But the daughter stepped closer, her eyes wide with something between wonder and pity. "It's just a baby," she whispered. "And look, it trusts Rex." Against their fears, they carried the small creature back to the farmhouse, laying it gently on a blanket near the fireplace. Rex refused to leave its side, lying protectively beside the dragon, his body a wall of warmth and safety. The dragon's breathing steadied, its body glowing faintly whenever Rex's tail brushed against it. As night fell, the family realized something extraordinary was happening. Whenever Rex barked at distant sounds outside, the dragon raised its tiny head and let out a small, awkward bark of its own, as though mimicking him. When Rex circled the rug before lying down, the dragon clumsily tried to do the same. And when Rex finally closed his eyes, the dragon curled up against him and drifted into sleep as if it had always belonged there. But sleep did not bring peace. The family woke in the night to Rex growling at the window, his body rigid, fur bristling. The dragon was awake too, its eyes glowing faintly in the dark, its tiny body pressed against the shepherd's side. Both of them stared at the forest beyond the fields, unblinking, unafraid yet deeply alert. The mother looked out, but the yard was empty, silent under the pale light of the twin moons. Still, she felt it, the strange, crawling weight of being watched. The father closed the shutters, muttering that it was only nerves, only shadows playing tricks. But when morning came, he found claw marks on the wooden frame of the window, deep and jagged, marks no human hand could have made. Rex sniffed them, growled low, and the dragon did the same, a faint hiss of light flickering between its small teeth. The girl pressed her hand against the creature's scales and whispered to it softly, feeling its warmth, feeling how it leaned into her touch. She looked at Rex, then back at the dragon, and for the first time, she wasn't afraid. Instead, she felt a chill of realization. Whatever this creature was, it had chosen Rex. And now, whatever hunted in the shadows of the forest, it would have to face them both. The morning air was sharp with cold, carrying the damp smell of soil and pine. The family tried to return to their routine, but nothing felt normal anymore. The dragon, though weak and still recovering, refused to let Rex out of its sight. When the shepherd walked to the door, the dragon scrambled clumsily after him, tripping over its own tail but determined to follow. When Rex barked at the chickens, the dragon barked too, an odd, broken sound that made the girl laugh nervously, though her parents only exchanged uneasy glances. By midday, it was clear this wasn't temporary. Wherever Rex went, the dragon went too, copying him like a shadow that had learned to breathe. The girl began to notice strange details. When Rex stopped to drink water from the trough, the dragon lowered its head and did the same, though the water hissed faintly where its lips touched, as though warmed by hidden heat inside its small body. When Rex dug at the dirt near the garden fence, the dragon clawed at the same spot, its talons leaving deeper grooves in the soil than they should have for something so small. And when Rex barked toward the forest, the dragon's scales flickered with a faint light, pulsing like a heartbeat. It was more than mimicry. It felt like learning, like the creature was absorbing Rex's instincts, copying not just his actions but his sense of what was safe, what was dangerous, and who belonged to him. That evening, while the father repaired the fence, the girl wandered near the tree line with Rex and the dragon at her side. The forest loomed darker than usual, its shadows stretched long by the setting sun. The wind whispered through the branches, carrying with it a low hum she couldn't quite place, a sound that seemed to come from beneath the earth itself. Rex froze, ears standing tall, hackles rising. The dragon froze too, its small body stiff, scales flaring faintly with light. Both of them stared into the woods, unblinking, as though they sensed something her human eyes could not. The girl followed their gaze, but the forest was still. She felt her chest tighten anyway. "What is it?" she whispered, but neither Rex nor the dragon moved. Then, as suddenly as the tension had gripped them, Rex barked sharply and lunged forward a step. The dragon mimicked him instantly, wings twitching, jaws parting with a hiss of faint heat. The sound that answered was not an echo. It was real. A branch snapped deep in the trees, too heavy for a deer or small animal. The girl backed away slowly, tugging Rex's collar. Her heart thudded as she whispered, "Let's go back." That night, after dinner, the family sat in uneasy silence. The father paced, muttering that the creature should never have been brought home. "It's not a pet," he said. "It's an unknown. And whatever left those claw marks on the window, it's connected." The mother agreed, though softer, more uncertain. The girl only shook her head. "It's just a baby," she insisted, her voice trembling. "It hasn't hurt us. Look at it, it trusts Rex, it trusts us. If we send it away, it won't survive." Their argument died when Rex growled from the living room. The dragon was awake too, scales glowing faintly again. Both of them stood facing the window, bodies tense. The father grabbed a lantern and opened the door, stepping into the cool night. The yard stretched silent before him, the crops swaying gently in the breeze. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then he saw it, just beyond the edge of the lantern's glow. A figure, tall and crooked, standing between the trees. It didn't move, didn't sway with the branches, didn't breathe. It only stood there, watching. His throat went dry. He stepped back, closing the door quickly, locking it. He didn't speak of what he saw. Not yet. Instead, he told them to keep the shutters closed, the lanterns lit, and to stay together. Rex wouldn't settle for the rest of the night, pacing restlessly, his eyes always on the windows. The dragon copied him again, pacing with its little claws clicking on the wooden floor, its golden eyes glowing like tiny lanterns in the dark. The next morning, they found tracks in the dirt. Long, sharp, pressed deep into the soil as though made by something heavy. They circled the farmhouse, but never crossed closer than the walls. The girl crouched to touch one, her hand trembling. They weren't animal tracks. They weren't human. The dragon sniffed at them, then hissed softly, pressing close to Rex. The shepherd growled low, a sound that made the father's skin crawl. The mother whispered, Why didn't they come closer? No one had an answer. But as the sun rose higher, the girl began to notice something strange. Wherever Rex stood, the dragon stood. Wherever Rex barked, the dragon barked. And whenever Rex growled at the forest, the dragon's scales glowed brighter, pulsing as though answering some invisible signal. It wasn't just following him anymore. It was syncing with him, reacting at the exact same moment, like two parts of the same creature. That night, the family tried to sleep, but the sound returned, the low hum rising from the forest, stronger than before. It vibrated through the walls, through the floorboards, into their bones. The dragon woke instantly, wings twitching, eyes blazing gold. Rex stood beside it, barking furiously at the door. The girl ran to the window despite her parents' protests and pulled back the curtain just enough to see. The forest was glowing faintly, patches of pale blue light shifting between the trees like ghostly lanterns. She clutched the curtain tight, her chest tight with both terror and wonder. Something was coming. And somehow, she knew the dragon and Rex already understood it better than any of them. The forest glowed faintly in the distance, the strange blue lights weaving between the trees like spirits drifting just out of reach. The girl pressed her face against the glass, her breath fogging the window as her heart raced. Behind her, Rex's barks shook the room, sharp and fierce, echoing through the farmhouse like warnings of a storm on the horizon. The dragon, small but unyielding, stood beside him, golden eyes locked on the door, its scales glowing brighter with each bark, as if it was drawing courage from the shepherd. The parents whispered frantically, voices filled with fear, debating whether to leave the house or hide deeper inside. But the girl could not take her eyes off the forest. The lights were moving closer. Rex lunged toward the door, his body trembling with urgency. The dragon mimicked him, wings spreading slightly, letting out a hiss that sounded too big for its small body. The father grabbed his rifle, though his hands shook as he loaded it. "We're not safe here," he muttered. "This isn't just an animal wandering too close. Something knows where we are." The mother clutched the girl's arm, urging her away from the window, but the girl resisted. Her instincts told her this wasn't random. The dragon hadn't come to them by accident. The crash, the claw marks, the figure in the woods, it was all connected. Then, silence fell. Rex stopped barking. The dragon froze, every scale dimming to a faint shimmer. The house felt suffocatingly still, the kind of silence that didn't belong to the world of birds and wind but to something watching, waiting. Slowly, a sound began to break it. Not the hum from before, but something sharper. A scrape. A drag. Metal against wood. The family turned toward the front door as a long, jagged claw pushed against it, curling through the crack near the hinge. The mother screamed, the father raised his rifle, and Rex exploded into furious barking, hurling himself at the door. The dragon leapt with him, light flaring across its body, and together they snarled and hissed, a wall of sound and fury against the intruder. The claw retracted. The dragging sound retreated. The hum returned, distant again. For a long moment, no one moved. Then the father exhaled shakily and muttered, "They're testing us. Seeing how we'll react." He looked at the dragon, still glowing faintly as it pressed itself against Rex. "And they know it's here." The next days blurred into unease. The family tried to keep to their routines, but the forest pressed closer with every sunrise. At night, blue lights danced between the trees, sometimes forming strange shapes, almost like symbols written in the air. Every morning brought new marks in the dirt around the farmhouse, sometimes clawed, sometimes scorched as if the ground itself had burned under something heavy. Rex never rested, patrolling the house, growling at shadows, always with the dragon pacing beside him. The girl began to feel that the two of them weren't just guarding the house, they were preparing for something inevitable. One evening, as the sun dipped low, the girl slipped outside with Rex and the dragon, unable to stay cooped up any longer. She wandered to the edge of the fields, her lantern swinging in the growing dark. Rex padded ahead, alert, ears pricked, while the dragon clambered after him with surprising determination. She sat on a fallen log, hugging her knees, staring at the line of trees where the forest began. The silence pressed heavy around her, broken only by Rex's low growls. Then the dragon climbed onto the log beside her, curling its tail around her arm. Its scales pulsed faintly in rhythm with Rex's steady breaths. For the first time, she realized their bond wasn't just mimicry, it was connection. The dragon wasn't simply following Rex. It was sinking with him, adapting, strengthening. Her thoughts were broken by movement. A shadow slipped between the trees, tall, too thin, moving with a slow, deliberate stride. The girl's lantern shook in her hand. Rex stepped in front of her, teeth bared, growling with a sound that seemed deeper than usual, almost primal. The dragon copied him instantly, wings flaring, light burning brighter across its scales. The shadow stopped, just at the edge of the trees, then slowly raised one long arm and pointed directly at the girl. The gesture froze her blood. She couldn't breathe. Then, as quickly as it appeared, the shadow melted back into the dark, swallowed by the forest. She stumbled back inside, shaking, trying to explain, but her parents looked more broken than surprised. The father sat heavily in his chair, rubbing his face. "They're not here for us," he said. "They're here for it." His eyes flicked to the dragon, which was still pressed against Rex, both of them glaring at the door. "And if they want it badly enough to stalk us like this, then we're already in a war we don't understand." That night, sleep was impossible. The hum grew louder than ever, vibrating through the walls until the dishes rattled on the shelves. Rex barked himself hoarse, refusing to back down, and the dragon stood beside him, light blazing in waves that seemed to fight back against the sound. The girl lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her chest aching with fear and awe. She realized something her parents hadn't said aloud: the dragon wasn't just some lost creature. It was important. Maybe a weapon. Maybe a key. Maybe something hunted because of what it could become. And somehow, by following Rex, it had chosen them. When dawn finally broke, the hum stopped. The forest fell silent again. But outside the farmhouse, in the soil of their yard, a message had been carved deep by clawed hands. Not words in English, but symbols, glowing faintly with the same blue light that haunted the woods. The family stared at it, no one daring to touch. The girl shivered as she realized it wasn't a warning. It was a promise. The dragon hissed, pressing against Rex's leg. And for the first time, she wondered not if the creature was safe with them, but if they were safe with it. The morning sun lit the sky in pale gold, but the farmhouse felt darker than ever. The strange glowing symbols carved into the soil had not faded overnight. They shimmered faintly, as though alive, pulsing in rhythm with the heartbeat of the earth. The family stood around them in silence, fear pressing heavy on their shoulders. Rex growled low, fur bristling, while the baby dragon crouched beside him, its scales flickering in time with the symbols, as if answering a call only it could hear. The father wanted to cover them, to bury them under dirt and stone, but every time he tried to approach, Rex blocked him, teeth bared. The dragon hissed too, small wings spreading wide. It wasn't just protection. It was warning. Whatever the symbols meant, they weren't meant to be touched. The girl crouched closer, studying them with wide eyes. The symbols weren't random scratches, they had form and order, like a language written by something intelligent. And as she stared, she thought she saw shapes hidden in their glow, spirals, stars, and something like an eye staring upward. Her heart raced, but she couldn't look away. The dragon pressed closer to her, scales humming with light. She whispered, "You understand this, don't you?" But the creature only blinked, golden eyes reflecting the symbols back at her like tiny mirrors. That night, the family kept every lantern lit, but the light didn't chase away the tension. The hum returned, deep and resonant, rolling under the ground like thunder from beneath their feet. The house trembled, the windows rattled, and dust fell from the beams. The father gripped his rifle, pacing, muttering that they couldn't wait any longer. They had to leave the homestead, find the other settlers, warn them. The mother argued they couldn't travel at night, not with the forest alive and watching. But Rex had no patience for arguments. He barked furiously at the door, hackles raised, the dragon matching him with hissing snarls and bursts of light across its scales. Then came the sound, slow, deliberate footsteps outside, circling the house. The girl held her breath as shadows moved across the windows, tall shapes, too many to count. Rex barked louder, claws scratching the floor, throwing himself against the door as though he could tear it down to fight whatever waited outside. The dragon leapt beside him, its body glowing so bright the room lit up like a lantern. The parents shouted over the noise, ordering everyone to stay away from the windows, but the girl couldn't help it. She peeked through a crack in the shutters. Her breath caught in her throat. They were standing in the yard. Dozens of figures, tall and skeletal, their limbs too long, their heads tilted unnaturally as though they had no bones at all. Their bodies shimmered faintly, the same blue glow as the forest lights, their eyes like burning coals. They didn't move like hunters or soldiers. They stood like statues, waiting, watching. At their feet, the glowing symbols stretched wider, creeping across the soil as though alive, reaching toward the house like veins of light. The girl stumbled back, gasping. "They are here," she cried. The father raised his rifle and pointed it at the door, but the mother grabbed his arm. "Don't shoot," she hissed. "What if it's what they want?" But her warning came too late. The father pulled the trigger, and the blast shattered the silence. The bullet tore through the wood of the door, but outside, the figures didn't flinch. Instead, the hum grew louder, shaking the house so violently the lanterns crashed to the floor, plunging them into flickering shadows. The dragon screeched, its small body glowing like molten metal, wings flaring wide for the first time. Rex barked in fury, throwing his body against the door until the hinges screamed. Together, the two of them seemed to push back against the sound, their defiance like a shield. For a moment, the glowing symbols on the ground faltered, dimming slightly, as though the intruders had been challenged. The girl stared in awe. The baby dragon wasn't just mimicking Rex, it was amplifying him, feeding his strength, creating something greater than either of them alone. The creatures outside shifted, their heads tilting in eerie unison. Then, as quickly as they had come, they retreated, melting back into the forest. The hum faded. The glowing symbols sank back into the soil, leaving the yard scarred and dark once more. The silence that followed was unbearable, heavy with questions and fear. The father slumped into a chair, his face pale. "They weren't here to kill us," he muttered. "Not yet. They were testing it." His eyes flicked to the dragon, still pressed against Rex, scales dimming as exhaustion overtook it. The girl shook her head. "No," she whispered. "They were calling it." Days passed, but the family found no peace. The forest glowed brighter each night, the hum deeper, the sense of being watched unbearable. Rex and the dragon never left each other's side, their strange connection growing stronger with every passing day. The girl began to notice that even Rex's movements had changed, his barks sharper, his growls deeper, his eyes sharper in the dark. It was as though the dragon's presence was changing him, just as Rex was shaping the dragon. One evening, while gathering water from the well, the girl looked up to see something that froze her blood. At the edge of the field stood not one of the skeletal figures, but something larger. A towering silhouette, wings folded tight against its back, eyes burning with blue fire. It wasn't watching the house. It was watching the dragon. She dropped the bucket, water spilling into the dirt, and ran back inside. Her voice shook as she told them what she had seen. The father gripped his rifle, though his hands trembled. "It's not just soldiers," he said. "There's a leader, and it wants the dragon back." That night, the girl dreamed of fire and ash. She saw Rex and the dragon standing together, a wall of light against an army of shadows. She woke gasping, her chest heavy, the hum still vibrating in her bones. The dragon lifted its head from beside Rex, its golden eyes glowing faintly, as though it too had seen the same dream. For the first time, the girl understood something terrifying and beautiful. The dragon hadn't chosen them by mistake. It had bonded with Rex for a reason. And that reason was coming closer every night. The night was sharp and restless, the air thick with the electric taste of a coming storm. The farmhouse walls felt too thin, too fragile, like paper holding back the weight of a world pressing in from all sides. The father barely slept anymore, rifle always within reach, pacing the rooms like a trapped soldier. The mother whispered prayers under her breath, though her hands shook too badly to sew or cook. The girl spent her nights near the window, staring at the tree line, waiting for the glow to return. But Rex never waited. He prowled the house endlessly, growling, teeth flashing in the dark, as if daring the forest to come closer. And the dragon followed him with equal intensity, mimicking every move, every stance, every sound. When Rex barked, the dragon hissed like fire through stone. When Rex braced his body low, ready to lunge, the dragon did the same, its golden eyes burning with eerie intelligence. It was clear now to all of them that the bond was not just friendship, it was fusion. Rex was no longer just a shepherd dog guarding his family. His strength, his instincts, his very presence had grown sharper, stranger, more deliberate, as though something ancient and alien had stitched itself into his being. And the dragon, though still small, carried itself with purpose far beyond its size. It was learning, growing, adapting through Rex. The family could feel it in the way the house itself seemed to breathe when the two of them stood guard, light and sound pulsing in unison, as if they had become one creature split into two bodies. But with this bond came danger. The glowing symbols returned each night, carved into the soil in fresh patterns that spread wider and wider, encircling the farmhouse in an expanding ring of strange language. No matter how far the father dug or tried to cover them, by the next evening new ones appeared, more complex, more alive. The girl began to dream of them, seeing their shapes in her sleep, waking with the taste of ash in her mouth and the echo of the hum in her ears. Sometimes she saw the skeletal figures standing over her bed, their glowing eyes unblinking, watching her breathe, but when she sat up, they were gone. Only Rex and the dragon remained, awake and restless, as if they had seen the same visions. One evening, the family gathered at the table, their voices low and urgent. The father insisted they could not wait any longer. They had to take the dragon and flee to the nearest settlement, warn others of what was happening. If these things want it, he said, nodding toward the creature curled beside Rex, then maybe the colony leaders will know what to do. But the girl shook her head fiercely. No, she said. They don't just want it. They're afraid of it. That's why they're trying to surround us, weaken us. They're not just hunters. They're soldiers. And it's not a pet. It's a weapon. The mother paled, staring at her daughter as though she had spoken something forbidden. How could you know that? She whispered. The girl hesitated but then told them everything, the dreams, the visions of fire and battle, of Rex and the dragon standing against an army of shadows. It's not just following him, she said softly. It's choosing him. And if we leave, they'll follow. They'll burn everything to take it back. Before the parents could argue, Rex shot to his feet, growling low, ears rigid. The dragon hissed, scales flaring with light. The hum had returned, louder than ever, vibrating through the floorboards like the beat of a monstrous heart. The lanterns flickered, the windows shook. Then came the sound of splintering wood. The barn collapsed outside with a deafening crack, the roof caving in as though crushed by invisible hands. The family rushed to the window and froze. The figures were no longer at the tree line. They were in the field. Dozens of them, skeletal and glowing, walking in perfect silence, their long limbs moving with predatory grace. Behind them, towering above the crowd, was the winged silhouette the girl had seen before, its eyes like two suns burning in the dark. It raised its arms, and the glowing symbols on the ground flared to life, forming a blazing circle around the farmhouse. The hum grew so loud it felt like knives in their skulls, forcing them to their knees. The mother screamed, clutching her head, while the father fired his rifle wildly through the window. The bullets ripped through empty air but slowed unnaturally, falling to the ground before reaching the figures. Rex barked furiously, throwing his body against the door, but this time the dragon did not just mimic him. It roared. A piercing, echoing sound that shook the glass and lit the room with a burst of golden fire. The hum faltered for a heartbeat, the glowing circle stuttering like a broken signal. Rex lunged forward, and the dragon leapt with him, their combined fury crashing against the sound in waves. For a moment, impossibly, the skeletal army stopped advancing. The girl's eyes widened. "Do you see?" she shouted over the roar. "They're fighting it. They're stronger together." The parents clung to each other in terror as the girl stumbled to her feet, running to the door where Rex and the dragon stood blazing with defiance. She felt the heat of the dragon's scales, the vibration of Rex's growl, and in that moment, she knew. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The winged figure in the field tilted its head, its burning gaze fixed on the dragon. Slowly, it spread its massive wings, and the sky darkened, clouds swirling unnaturally as lightning split the horizon. With a single gesture, it summoned more symbols across the ground, glowing brighter, forming shapes that pulsed with violent energy. The girl's breath caught as she realized what was happening. It wasn't just surrounding them anymore. It was opening something. A gate. The hum turned into a roar, the earth splitting with cracks of light. Shadows poured from the ground, writhing shapes with no faces, no form, just hunger. They swarmed toward the farmhouse, shrieking in silence, and the girl knew this was it. Either Rex and the dragon would stand against them, or they would all be swallowed whole. And then, as the first shadow leapt at the door, Rex lunged, his bark like thunder. The dragon roared with him, fire erupting from its tiny throat in a burst far greater than its size should allow. Light and sound collided, shattering the first wave of shadows into smoke. The girl screamed, not in fear, but in awe. The bond between Rex and the dragon was no accident. It was destiny. But destiny always came at a price. The storm above the farmhouse raged like a living thing, lightning carving the sky into jagged scars while the earth below glowed with the burning symbols etched deep into the soil. The skeletal figures advanced without sound, their glowing eyes locked on the dragon that stood beside Rex. The farmhouse shook as if the ground itself resented what was happening. Inside, the family clung to one another, but the girl pressed forward, drawn by something she couldn't name. She could see it now, clearer than ever before. The dragon wasn't afraid. It was ready. And Rex, her loyal protector since childhood, had become something more, his body trembling with energy that didn't belong to any ordinary dog. The winged figure towered in the field, its silhouette stretching across the land as its glowing hands wove the symbols tighter, feeding the gate that crackled with shadow and fire. The hum grew unbearable, rattling bones, breaking glass, tearing shingles from the roof. The mother cried out, collapsing to her knees. The father tried to lift her but fell himself, blood seeping from his nose. Only the girl could move, stumbling toward the door as Rex and the dragon braced themselves against the storm. And then it happened. The circle around the farmhouse flared like a sun, and the shadows poured through in a black tide, clawing at the walls, hurling themselves at the windows. Rex leapt forward, slamming into the first of them, his bark exploding like cannon fire. The dragon followed with a roar, spitting golden flames that scorched the shadows into ash. But for every one that fell, more came. The farmhouse was drowning in a sea of creatures that should not exist. The girl grabbed her father's rifle though she knew it was useless. She fired anyway, her shots disappearing into smoke before reaching their targets. It didn't matter. She had to fight. Beside her, Rex's growls turned into something deeper, something unearthly, and the dragon's flames burned hotter with every attack, as if feeding on his determination. Their bond was no longer mimicry, it was unity. Two souls beating in one rhythm, their power entwined. The winged figure raised its arms higher, and the shadows shifted, forming a massive spear of darkness that coiled in the sky like a serpent ready to strike. The girl gasped. This wasn't just a hunt. It was an execution. The leader wasn't here to reclaim the dragon. It was here to destroy it before it grew too strong. And Rex was the shield standing in its way. Rex barked once, the sound sharp and commanding, and the dragon turned to him, golden eyes blazing. For a moment, everything slowed. The girl saw Rex glance at her, his gaze steady, loyal, filled with something she swore was understanding. And then he leapt. Straight into the heart of the shadows. The dragon followed, its tiny wings glowing as though they had caught fire themselves, flames trailing behind it like a comet. The impact was blinding. Golden light burst across the field, ripping through the shadows, tearing holes in the glowing circle. The skeletal figures shrieked without sound, staggering back as the power spread like a shockwave. The farmhouse shook violently, walls cracking, windows shattering. The girl was thrown to the floor, her ears ringing, her heart pounding as the storm split in two. And then, silence. She pushed herself up, coughing through smoke and dust. The field was scorched, the glowing symbols shattered into broken fragments. Shadows writhed weakly, dissolving into ash that blew away in the wind. But Rex was gone. Her heart froze. She spun wildly, calling his name, searching the field. Then she saw him. Standing in the center, battered, fur-burned and blooded, but alive. And beside him, the dragon was no longer small. Its body had grown in the light, wings stretched wide, scales shining like molten gold. It was still young, but no longer helpless. It stood as though it had remembered who it was meant to be. The winged figure was still there, kneeling now, its massive form flickering, unstable. Its eyes burned with fury as it raised its head to look at them. It has chosen, the voice boomed, not in sound, but inside their minds, cold and ancient. And because it has chosen, you are cursed. The girl stumbled back, clutching her ears, but Rex stood firm, growling low, the dragon roaring with him. The figure hissed, wings folding around itself, and in a blast of light, it vanished, leaving only the scorched field and the broken symbols behind. The storm ended as suddenly as it began. The sky cleared, the night silent once more. The farmhouse was ruined, the barn destroyed, but they were alive. Rex limped toward the girl, his body trembling but his spirit unbroken. She dropped to her knees, hugging him tight, sobbing into his fur. The dragon curled around them both, its scales glowing gently, almost like a heartbeat. For the first time, the girl felt not fear, but certainty. They had survived, but survival was not victory. Her father staggered to the doorway, his face pale, eyes wide as he looked at the dragon's new form. "We can't keep this secret anymore," he said hoarsely. "The colony must know. The whole planet must know. Whatever this is, it's bigger than us. It's war." The girl looked at Rex and the dragon, the two of them still standing side by side, guardians of the family and now, perhaps, of much more. She nodded slowly. The bond between them had already defied death, defied alien armies, defied fate itself. Whatever the winged figure had meant by curse, she no longer believed it. This was no curse. This was a beginning. Far above them, the stars burned bright, and for the first time, she wondered if they were watching. And deep in the forest, where the shadows had fled, the hum began again, distant, patient, waiting. Because war had only just begun.